I'm Chloe Green, 24, female. I live and breathe through a camera lens. My small apartment in the city is more of a darkroom and studio than a home, filled with the scent of developer fluid and the soft glow of a computer monitor where I spend hours editing the world as I see it. As a freelance photographer, life is a beautiful, chaotic hustle of chasing light, clients, and the next paycheck. It's a life I built for myself, piece by piece, far from the perfectly manicured lawn of the suburban home I grew up in. That world, my family's world, was one of spreadsheets, quarterly reports, and the quiet, crushing weight of expectation. I was the artistic anomaly in a family that measured worth in stock portfolios and job titles. This is the story of how my family tried to bill me for my own exclusion, putting a price tag on love and belonging. They thought I was just the quiet, artsy daughter they could manipulate, but they never imagined I'd be the one to develop the picture that exposed them all. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, sandwiched between a client invoice and a spam ad for camera lenses. The subject line was deceptively cheerful, family vacation time. It was from my mother, Linda. My mom's enthusiasm was directly proportional to how much something cost and how good it would look on social media. I clicked it open with a familiar sense of dread. Dearest family, it began, get your passports ready. Your father and I have booked a magnificent, all-inclusive 2-week getaway to the Grand Walia Resort in Maui. It's the perfect opportunity for us to finally spend some quality time together. We're talking infinity pools, 5-star dining, and beautiful beaches. We've booked 2 adjoining suites. All we need are flight confirmations. I've attached the resort information. Let's coordinate flights ASAP. Love, Mom. I leaned back in my chair, the worn leather groaning in protest. Maui, Grand Walia. I did a quick search, and the numbers that flashed on the screen made my stomach clench. This wasn't a vacation, it was a financial event. For my parents, Linda, a high-performing real estate agent, and Mark, a senior accountant, this was a drop in the bucket. For my older brother, Alex, a 28-year-old corporate lawyer already making a 6-figure salary, it was a well-deserved break. For me, Chloe, the 24-year-old freelance photographer whose income fluctuated with the seasons, it was a mountain. My relationship with my family had always been transactional. Love and approval were commodities earned through achievements they could understand. Alex had been a straight-A student, an Ivy League graduate, and now a lawyer at a prestigious firm. He was their masterpiece, the son they could brag about at dinner parties. I, on the other hand, had traded a practical degree for art school. I was their creative one, a title that sounded like a compliment but was always delivered with a faint, pitying smile. They saw my passion as a hobby, a phase I'd hopefully outgrow before I needed to ask them for money. The thing was, I never did. I was fiercely independent. I worked tirelessly, shooting weddings on weekends, corporate headshots on weekdays, and selling prints of my personal work online. I lived frugally, pouring every spare dollar back into my business or into a high-yield savings account I'd painstakingly built since I was a teenager. That account was my secret pride, my escape hatch, and the seed money for a down payment on a small condo of my own. It was my proof to myself, if not to them, that my path was viable. I knew this vacation wasn't optional. The subtext of my mother's email was clear: be there or be a disappointment. Opting out would be seen as a rejection of the family itself, further evidence of my failure to keep up. It would fuel a year's worth of passive-aggressive comments and "we're so worried about you" conversations. So I started crunching numbers, trying to find a way to make it work without completely draining my accounts. The cheapest flights I could find were still over $1,000, and that wasn't even counting the food, activities, and other expenses that all-inclusive never truly covered. A few days later, my mother called. "Chloe, honey, I haven't heard from you about the flights," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Alex has already booked his, first class of course. He's so thoughtful, using his air miles for an upgrade." "Hi, Mom." "It sounds amazing," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "I was just looking at flights. They're pretty expensive right now." "Oh, don't worry about that," she breezed. "Think of it as an investment in family memories." "You can't put a price on that, can you?" The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. She was literally asking me to put a price on it. "We just want everyone to be together. It wouldn't be the same if one of us was missing." The guilt was a well-honed tool in her arsenal, and she wielded it with surgical precision. She knew I had a deep-seated fear of being left out, a childhood wound she had helped create. I was always the last one picked, the one trailing behind Alex and his friends. This feeling, this childish panic of being abandoned, was what she was counting on. I spent the next week in a state of low-grade anxiety. I took on an extra gig, a last-minute event that had me on my feet for 12 hours straight, all while my mind was calculating and recalculating my budget. I transferred money from my business account to my personal one, feeling a pang of guilt as I watched the number dwindle. I was sacrificing a new lens I desperately needed for this investment in family memories. Finally, I called my mom to tell her I was in, bracing myself for the financial hit. But I had no idea that the real price of this vacation had nothing to do with the airline ticket. The setup was complete. I was walking into the trap with my eyes wide open, so desperate for a seat at the table that I didn't realize they were planning to charge me for the chair, the table, and the entire room. The final conversation happened on a Sunday evening. I'd been putting it off, hoping a magical last-minute flight deal would appear and solve all my problems. It didn't. With the departure date looming, I knew I had to face the music. I took a deep breath and dialed my mother's number. "Chloe, I was just about to call you," Linda answered, her voice crisp. "We need to finalize everything. The resort needs a final headcount for some of the dinner reservations." "That's why I'm calling," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'm in, I'll come, but Mom, I have to be honest, the cost is really stretching me thin. The flights alone are just a lot." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the calculations whirring in her head. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. The feigned warmth was gone, replaced by a cool, business-like demeanor. "I've been looking at the prices. They're fluctuating, of course, but it seems the average rate for a decent seat is holding steady." She paused for dramatic effect. "Flights are $1,450 each." The number hit me like a physical blow. $1,450. It was even higher than the most expensive options I'd seen. It was an impossibly specific number. "Each," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Mom, I don't know if I can swing that. That would wipe out my business savings for the next 6 months." Her response was immediate and sharp, the words honed to a razor's edge. "Well, Chloe, it is what it is. Your father, Alex, and I are all paying it. This is a family trip, not a charity case." Then came the line that would echo in my mind for months. "If you cannot afford it, then you should just stay behind." Stay behind? The two words she knew would gut me. It wasn't an offer or an option, it was a threat. Stay behind and be forgotten. Stay behind and confirm that you don't belong. Stay behind and prove us right about your life choices. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything left unsaid. She wasn't just talking about a vacation, she was talking about my place in the family. My throat felt tight. "No," I said, the word tasting like defeat. "No, I can do it, I'll make it work." "Good," she said, her voice instantly reverting to its cheerful tone, the emotional whiplash leaving me dizzy. "Just transfer the money to my account. It's easier if I book all our tickets together on my card to make sure we get seats near each other. I'll send you my details." I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. My best friend Emily was over, and she'd been listening with a thunderous expression on her face. "Are you kidding me?" She exploded the second I put the phone down. "Chloe, that is blatant emotional blackmail. $1,450 for a flight to Maui in the off-season? No way, she's lying." "You don't know that," I said weakly, wanting to defend my mom even as my own gut screamed that Emily was right. "Maybe she's looking at premium economy or something. Or maybe she's taking you for a ride," Emily insisted, her eyes flashing with anger on my behalf. "Don't do it, please just call her back and say you can't go. You don't have to subject yourself to this." But I couldn't. The thought of the phone calls that would follow, my dad's disappointed sighs, my brother's smug "I told you so" attitude, my mother's cold shoulder for the next year was unbearable. More than that, a tiny, foolish part of me still hoped that if I just did this one thing, if I paid the exorbitant price without complaint, maybe they would finally see me. Maybe on a beach in Maui, surrounded by paradise, we could be the happy, normal family I always dreamed we were. That night, I sat at my laptop, my heart pounding in my chest. I opened my banking app and looked at the balance of my savings account, my condo fund, my future. With a deep sense of shame and resignation, I typed in my mother's account number and the amount. $1,450. I hesitated for a long moment, my cursor hovering over the confirm transfer button. It felt like I was paying a ransom for a hostage that was already gone. I clicked the button. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. It didn't say, "Thank you, honey, I know this is a sacrifice and I appreciate it." It didn't say, "I'm so excited to have you with us." It just said, "Received." The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the cold, calculated way she had presented the lie. She had named a price for my inclusion, and like a fool, I had paid it. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the screen illuminating the single, dismissive word, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of something colder and harder than disappointment. It was the slow, burning ember of rage. The vacation was exactly what I had expected, a 2-week-long performance piece. We posed for smiling photos against stunning sunsets, the image of a perfect family, but behind the smiles, the tension was suffocating. My mother paraded us around the resort, a testament to her success. My father, Mark, was his usual passive self, nodding along to whatever Linda said. Alex was praised endlessly for a minor victory at his firm, while my recent publication in a local photography magazine was dismissed with a "Oh, that's nice, dear." I was a ghost at the feast. There were inside jokes I didn't get, conversations I was excluded from, and a handful of expensive dinner excursions that I was conveniently only told about after they had already returned. "Oh, we didn't think you'd be interested, Chloe. It was a stuffy, boring affair," my mother would say, even as she showed me photos of them laughing on a private catamaran. I was the family photographer, there to document the memories I wasn't truly a part of. The $1,450 I had paid felt less like a ticket to join them and more like a fee for front row seats to my own alienation. The real discovery, however, didn't happen until a month after we returned. I was trying to recover financially, working every job I could get, when my dad called me in a manufactured panic. "Chloe, your mother is going to kill me," he said, his voice flustered. I was trying to file our digital tax receipts, and I think I deleted the entire folder from the family cloud drive. "You're so good with this computer stuff, can you please take a look? I shared the main folder with you." It was a common occurrence. For an accountant, my father was surprisingly inept with technology. I sighed and agreed, logging into the shared drive he had set up years ago. I found the receipts folder in the trash bin and restored it easily. As I was about to log out, another folder caught my eye. "Maui trip finalized." Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on it. It was filled with dozens of files, hotel confirmations, restaurant receipts, and a subfolder labeled flights. My heart started to beat a little faster. Inside was a single PDF, the credit card statement from my mother's card showing the airline transaction. I opened it. There it was, a single charge to Hawaiian Airlines. The total amount was $3,120. I pulled out my phone's calculator, my fingers feeling numb. $3,120 divided by 4 people. The result flashed on the screen. $780. $780, not $1,450. The air left my lungs in a rush. Emily had been right, it wasn't just a slight markup. It was nearly double the actual cost. She had looked me in the eye, challenged my place in the family, and lied. She had stolen $670 from me, money I had worked my fingers to the bone for. I felt sick. The betrayal was so blatant, so petty. I scrolled through the rest of the statement, a hot, bitter anger rising in my throat. I saw the charge for the catamaran trip I wasn't invited on. I saw the receipt for a ridiculously expensive dinner for 3, but the worst was yet to come. The vacation had bled my checking account dry, but I still had my main savings account, my condo fund. That was my sanctuary, the one thing that was wholly mine. I had been avoiding looking at it, not wanting to face how far this trip had set me back from my goal, but now, with a growing sense of dread, I logged into my savings account. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. The balance was wrong. It was horrifyingly wrong. A huge chunk of it was just gone. I frantically scanned the transaction history, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. There was a single, massive withdrawal dated the week before our trip, a transfer to the account of Linda Green. The amount was $9,540. I couldn't breathe, my vision blurred. $9,540. It wasn't possible. I hadn't authorized it. How could she have done it? Then a memory surfaced, hazy and distant. When I was 18 and setting up the account, my mother had insisted on being a cosigner. "Just for emergencies, honey," she had said with a reassuring smile. "In case something happens and you need us to access it for you." I was young and trusting, and I had agreed. I had never thought to remove her. In all these years, she had never touched it. Until now, my emergency fund had become her vacation slush fund. This was no longer a petty overcharge on a flight. This was grand larceny. This was a violation of the deepest trust. I collapsed back into my chair, the world spinning around me. For a moment, all I felt was a profound, bottomless wave of grief. The mother I thought I had, the family I kept trying to earn my way into, they were all a fiction. In their eyes, I wasn't a daughter, I was a resource. My dreams of a home of my own, the symbol of my independence, had been cashed in to pay for her luxuries. The grief lasted for about an hour. Then the shock subsided, and what remained was a cold, clear, and diamond-hard fury. They had underestimated me my entire life. They saw me as the fragile artist, the emotional, impractical child. They had no idea what I was capable of. They had pushed me out of the family, and now I was going to burn the whole house down. My apartment became a war room. The initial shock gave way to a chillingly clear sense of purpose. Crying wouldn't get my money back. A screaming match would only result in gaslighting and denial. My mother would twist the story, paint me as ungrateful and hysterical, and my father would back her up. No, I needed evidence. I needed a case so airtight that no one, not even the most biased family member, could deny it. I became a forensic accountant of my own family's finances. The Maui trip finalized folder on the cloud drive was my starting point. It was a treasure trove of their deceit, left exposed by my father's carelessness. I saved every file to a secure external hard drive, then methodically went through each one. First, I documented the flight costs. The master receipt showed 4 economy tickets purchased in a block for $3,120. I then found a separate receipt for a last-minute seat upgrade to first class for one passenger, Alex. The cost was $2,015. My mother hadn't even used air miles as she'd claimed. She'd used cash. Next, I tackled the $9,540. That specific odd number had to correspond to something. I started cross-referencing the receipts from the trip against that amount. I opened a spreadsheet, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I listed every charge from the resort, from the fancy restaurants, from the high-end shops in Walia. Slowly, a sickening picture began to emerge. The numbers started to line up with terrifying precision. First, there was Alex's flight upgrade, $2,015. Then I found the receipt for the private catamaran excursion I'd been excluded from. It was for 3 passengers, Linda, Mark, and Alex. The cost was $1,575. Next, a series of dinners at the most exclusive restaurants in the resort. On the nights I was told to just grab a bite at the cafe, they had been indulging in tasting menus and expensive wine. The total for those 3 stuffy, boring affairs came to $2,390. There were spa treatments for 2, Linda and Alex, totaling $1,150. My father, it seemed, didn't even get to partake in all the luxuries. The final piece of the puzzle was a receipt from a designer boutique at the resort. One leather handbag, the same one my mother had been showing off to her friends since she got back. The price tag was $2,410. I added it all up on my spreadsheet. $2,015 plus $1,575 plus $2,390 plus $1,150 plus $2,410. The total was $9,540. It was a perfect match, a direct, calculated theft. They had drained my life savings to fund a luxury experience for themselves and my brother while simultaneously making me feel too poor to be fully included. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just that they took the money, it was that they made me pay for the very experiences they used to exclude me. I called the bank just to confirm. The customer service representative was sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Miss Green, but as your mother is a co-signer on the account, the withdrawal was perfectly legal. There's no fraud claim we can file. This is a civil matter, a civil matter." That meant it was my word against hers, my family against me. I knew then that I couldn't just present this information privately. They would deny, deflect, and destroy any evidence they could. I needed a public forum. I called Emily and laid out everything I had found, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. I sent her the spreadsheet, the receipts, the statements. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Chloe," she finally said, her voice shaking with rage, "this is monstrous. This isn't just selfish. This is sociopathic. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to get my money back," I said. "But more than that, I'm going to get the truth back. They've been writing their own narrative about me my whole life. Now it's my turn to tell the story, and I'm a much better storyteller than they are." Emily listened as I began to formulate a plan. My grief had burned away, leaving behind the cold, hard resolve of a person with nothing left to lose. My family had already taken everything that mattered. They thought they had left me with nothing, but they had forgotten one thing. They had left me with the truth, and I was a photographer. I knew better than anyone how to develop a negative into a crystal-clear picture that no one could ignore. The perfect opportunity presented itself a week later in the form of an embossed invitation that arrived in my mailbox. My mother was hosting her annual post-vacation garden party, an event where she gathered our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and a few close family friends, to showcase her perfect life. The highlight of the evening was always a slideshow of photos from their latest extravagant trip. It was a performance of happiness and prosperity, and this year the Maui trip was the star of the show. The invitation read, "Join us for an evening of stories and snapshots from our Hawaiian paradise." It was signed with a flourish by my mother. This was it. This was my stage. She was literally handing me the microphone and the projector. My plan began to take shape, not as a messy, emotional outburst, but as a meticulously crafted presentation. It would be my masterpiece. For the next 2 weeks, I dedicated every spare moment to its creation. I was a director, a curator, and a prosecutor all in one. First, I gathered the assets. I asked my mother to send me all her favorite photos from the trip for the slideshow. "I want to make sure I have the best ones for the party, Mom," I said, my voice dripping with false sincerity. She eagerly sent me a folder with over 200 curated images. My parents toasting with champagne, Alex surfing, the 3 of them laughing on that catamaran. Perfect. Then I assembled my own evidence. I scanned the bank statements, the credit card receipts, and the airline invoices. I used my design skills to make the information clean, clear, and undeniable. I highlighted the relevant names, dates, and amounts in bright red. I turned my damning spreadsheet into a series of simple, elegant infographics that laid out the math of their theft in stark, brutal terms. The final step was to weave the two narratives together. I started building the slideshow. It began innocently enough. The first dozen slides were her photos, set to upbeat, generic vacation music, sunsets, beaches, smiling faces. I would lull them into a state of comfortable complacency. But then, the story would pivot. After a beautiful photo of my mother posing with her new designer handbag, the next slide would be a high-resolution scan of the receipt for $2,410 with an arrow pointing to the item description. Underneath, a simple, bold caption, "The handbag, funded by Chloe's home savings account." After a triumphant shot of Alex in his spacious first-class seat, the next slide would be the receipt for his $2,015 upgrade. The caption, "The upgrade, a gift from his sister whether she knew it or not." I created a slide for every stolen luxury. The catamaran trip, the spa days, the extravagant dinners. Each of their happy memories would be immediately followed by the cold, hard proof of its true cost and who had paid it. I interspersed screenshots of my savings account, showing the balance before and after the $9,540 withdrawal. The climax of the presentation was the flight cost. I put a smiling photo of the four of us at the airport side by side with two pieces of evidence: the airline receipt showing the true cost of $780 per person, and a screenshot of the transfer confirmation from my bank account for $1,450. The caption was simple: "My ticket to paradise, a $670 lie." The final slide was the most powerful. It would be a stark black screen. In the center, in clean white text, would be the words my mother had used to threaten me, the words that had sealed my fate. "If you cannot afford it, stay behind." I rehearsed the presentation over and over, timing the slides, refining the captions. I practiced keeping my voice calm and steady. This was not about emotion. It was about the cold, methodical presentation of facts. I wasn't there to cry or scream. I was there to present evidence. I was there to collect a debt. The day of the garden party, Emily called me. "Are you sure about this, Chloe? This is the nuclear option. There's no coming back from this." "There's nothing to come back to," I replied, my voice resolute. "They blew up the bridge, not me. I'm just here to survey the wreckage." I put on a simple black dress, loaded the presentation onto a USB drive, and slipped it into my purse. I felt strangely calm. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking into my parents' house as the insecure daughter, desperate for their approval. I was walking in as a creditor, and the bill was coming due. The garden was beautiful, meticulously landscaped to project an image of effortless elegance, much like my mother herself. Dozens of relatives and friends mingled on the stone patio, sipping white wine and making polite conversation. The air was filled with the scent of jasmine and the sound of manufactured joy. My mother, Linda, was in her element, flitting between groups, accepting compliments on her home, her tan, and her new handbag. She greeted me at the door with a perfunctory air kiss. "Chloe, darling, you made it. Grab a drink. We'll be starting the slideshow in about half an hour." She didn't notice the coldness in my eyes or the tension in my smile. To her, I was just another prop in her perfect evening. I circulated for a few minutes, exchanging pleasantries with my aunts and uncles. My brother Alex gave me a condescending pat on the shoulder. "Good of you to show up," he said. "Mom was worried you'd be too busy with your projects." "I wouldn't miss this for the world," I replied, my voice even. Finally, the moment arrived. My father, Mark, tapped a glass for attention. "If everyone could gather around," he announced. "Linda is going to share some memories from our wonderful family trip to Maui." My mother beamed, gesturing toward the large flat-screen TV set up on the patio. "I have to give credit to my talented daughter, Chloe," she said, her voice full of false pride. "She put together the slideshow for us." She then turned to me and made her fatal mistake. "Chloe, honey, you're the tech expert. Why don't you come up and run the presentation from your laptop?" It was more perfect than I could have ever planned. I gave a small, tight smile. "Of course, Mom, I'd be happy to." I walked to the front, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum in my chest. I connected my laptop to the television, the familiar chime echoing across the now silent patio. The first slide appeared, a stunning panoramic shot of the Maui coastline. The upbeat music began to play. For the first 5 minutes, everything went according to Linda's script. There were photos of the infinity pool, the beautiful meals, the smiling faces. The crowd murmured its appreciation. My parents and Alex watched with smug satisfaction. They were reliving their glorious, exclusive vacation. Then the photo of my mother showing off her new handbag appeared on the screen. It was the cue. I took a deep breath and clicked to the next slide. The screen changed. The music cut out. A stark white background appeared, dominated by the crisp, clear image of the receipt from the designer store. The amount, $2,410, was circled in red. Below it, the caption bloomed into existence. "The handbag funded by Chloe's home savings account." A confused ripple went through the crowd. My mother's smile froze on her face. Before she could react, I clicked again, the photo of Alex in first class. Click, the receipt for his upgrade. Caption, the upgrade cost $2,015, a gift from his sister whether she knew it or not. Alex's jaw went slack, my father turned pale. The guests were now staring at the screen, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. I didn't say a word, I just let the images speak for me. Click, a photo of my parents and Alex on the catamaran. Click, the receipt for 3 passengers. Caption, the excursion I wasn't invited on, cost $1,575. Click, the bank statement showing the $9,540 withdrawal. Click, the infographic breaking down every single dollar. Click, the side-by-side comparison of the real flight cost versus the price I was forced to pay. With each click, the silence on the patio deepened until it was a crushing weight. The only sound was the soft tap of my finger on the trackpad. I moved through the slides with a calm, detached precision. My mother was now staring at me, her face a mask of disbelief and incandescent rage. Finally, I reached the end. The slideshow of their happy memories was over, replaced by an itemized list of their crimes. I advanced to the final slide. The screen went black, and then the white words appeared, stark and damning. If you cannot afford it, stay behind. I turned to face the crowd. I turned to face my family. My mother told me this when I hesitated to pay $1,450 for a $780 plane ticket. I said, my voice clear and strong, cutting through the silence. She and my father then secretly withdrew nearly $10,000 from my life savings to pay for the luxuries you just saw, while telling me I couldn't afford to join them. In total, they stole $10,210 from me. Pandemonium erupted. My mother shrieked, she's lying, she's making this up, this is photoshopped. But it was too late, the evidence had been presented. My relatives were looking from the receipts on the screen to my mother's new handbag to Alex's ashamed face. My Aunt Catherine was the first to speak. Linda, is this true? My mother sputtered, unable to form a coherent sentence. My father just stood there looking at the ground, a statue of guilt. I didn't wait for the verdict, my job was done. I disconnected my laptop, packed it into its bag, and turned to walk away. I'll be sending you a bill for the amount you owe me, I said calmly to my parents, my voice carrying across the patio. And if you refuse to pay, my next presentation will be in a courtroom. I walked through the stunned crowd, past the horrified faces of my family and friends. As I reached the edge of the patio, I heard my mother start to sob, not tears of remorse, but tears of pure, unadulterated humiliation. Her perfect party, her perfect image was in ashes, and I was the one who had lit the match. I didn't look back. I walked out of the meticulously landscaped garden, down the stone pathway, and got into my car. As I drove away, I saw my phone screen light up with a barrage of calls and texts. I silenced it and tossed it onto the passenger seat. For the first time in a very long time, I felt completely and utterly free. The weight of their expectations, the constant struggle for their approval, had vanished in the glow of that projector screen. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. My Aunt Catherine called me the next morning. She told me the party had imploded after I left. My mother's denials had fallen on deaf ears in the face of my evidence. The family was fractured, with most of them siding with me, disgusted by Linda's and Mark's actions. My parents' carefully constructed social standing was shattered overnight. My father sent me a long, rambling email full of weak excuses and pleas for forgiveness, blaming my mother's obsession with appearances. Alex sent a one-line text, I didn't know. I'm sorry. My mother sent a stream of venomous, hateful messages, calling me an ungrateful monster who had ruined her life. I didn't reply to any of them. I blocked their numbers and created a new email filter. I was done. With the help of a lawyer Emily recommended, I sent my parents a formal demand letter for the $10,210. Their lawyer responded with a lowball settlement offer. I refused. My lawyer informed them that our next step would be filing a civil suit, one that would make all the financial documents public record. The thought of having their greed laid bare in a public courthouse was enough. A week later, a certified check for the full amount plus my legal fees arrived via courier. Cashing that check was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. It wasn't just money, it was restitution. It was the return of my future. The months that followed were a period of rebuilding. I poured all my energy and newfound peace of mind into my work. Without the constant drain of my family's drama, my creativity flourished. I took on more ambitious projects, developed a unique style, and my client list grew. The pain of the betrayal didn't disappear overnight, but it slowly transformed into a source of strength. It was a stark reminder of what happened when I allowed others to define my worth. 6 months after the garden party, I used the returned money and the income from a series of high-profile gigs I'd landed to do exactly what I had always dreamed of. I signed a lease on a small, light-filled studio space in the Arts District. It wasn't a condo, not yet, but it was something better. It was a space that was entirely mine, built not on a compromised dream, but on my own terms. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty room, the afternoon sun streaming through the large industrial windows. My camera was in my hand. I wasn't just a photographer anymore. I was the author of my own life, the curator of my own happiness. My family had tried to teach me a cruel lesson that if I couldn't afford their version of love, I would be left behind. But the real lesson was one I had taught myself. Sometimes, the most valuable thing you can do is leave. You leave behind the people who see you as a liability and you walk forward into a future you frame for yourself. And that picture, the one of me standing alone and whole in a room full of possibility, was priceless.